Hello, everybody. This is Rabbi Marcus Rubenstein. Welcome to the Daily Derech, a special project of Temple of Aaron exploring Judaism, the United Synagogue of Conservative Judaism, and the Rabbinical Assembly. Today is the fourth day after Shabbat Kodesh, the 11th of Sivan, 5786, corresponding in the secular calendar to Wednesday, May 27th, 2026. We will read Parashat Naso this coming Shabbat. Let's begin. Me'am Loez. In this week, we are really looking now into the idea of teshuvah and repentance and sort of how it works. The Me'am Loez takes Parashat Naso in this particular area to talk about, to go into a deeper understanding of teshuvah. And this often happens in the Me'am Loez. It's one of the things that makes the commentary or the collection really unique, is that it's not just a commentary on the Torah, but it also tries to put in major practices of Judaism, spoken in a way that is really ready for everybody to understand in a clear and simple manner. It's one of the reasons that this book is just really wonderful. So if he feels like he can bring in some specific halachic guidance on a particular topic in the text, he'll bring it. And these are some of the most beautiful sections of Me'am Loez. This is really the section where he speaks much about teshuvah. And he really begins this section here by talking about the idea of confession, that we have to actually confess in Judaism. It's funny, I was talking to someone just yesterday, and I mentioned, we have to do a confession. And they looked at me with such strange eyes. And they're like, really? A confession? You sound like a Catholic priest or something. I thought that wasn't in our religion necessarily. And I'm like, no, it's certainly an essential part of our faith. Maybe we do it a little bit differently than the Catholics do. But certainly very, very important. Where this really comes out is when we do something, when we transgress and we do something wrong, it is really important that we do teshuvah on it. And not only that is it really important, I think not often enough, we actually say it's a mitzvah. It's a requirement. It's an obligation, whether you want to or not, to admit your wrongdoing to God when you've done something wrong. Now, of course, vidui is not just, or confession is not just about admitting what we've done wrong, but also detailing what we've done wrong, making an agreement and doing the inner work to make sure that we don't go back to doing the action again. Obviously, to make restitution, if someone was hurt through this action, some human person, then we make restitution for them. And we also apologize to them as well. Interestingly enough, the Me'am Loez actually expresses what would be the shortest way that we can say confess according to halacha, according to Jewish tradition, of actually fulfilling this positive commandment of confessing one's sins when one does something wrong. And his construction that he comes up with, this is Ana Hashem Chatati Aviti Fashati. Please, O God, I have made a mistaken transgression. I have gone wayward. I have done intentional transgressions as well before you. I did, and then you basically, so that's the sort of a general confession that I've done wrong, whether both intentionally and unintentionally. Remember that Judaism doesn't just care about intentional transgressions. It very much cares about unintentional transgressions as well, and wants you to take responsibility and actually obligates you to take responsibility for those transgressions. Then you detail specifically what you've done wrong. So, vasiti kach v'kach, I've done thusly and thusly, I've done this wrong thing. So we actually detail explicitly what we've done wrong. V'rei nichamti uvushati b'masai. And behold, I have truly regretted what I've done. I'm ashamed of my actions. So each of these are important, right? I have to express regret that if you could reverse time, you would not do the same thing again, right? You really do express regret that thing possibly happened. It's one thing to say, well, what I did was a sin, but I don't regret it, right? I know it was wrong, and I'm sorry, God, that I did it, but I would do it again. And, I get why I did it. But no, you actually have to regret the action itself and then express shame. And again, this is a big word that people often like to avoid in modern times, this shame word. But this is not a shame that's going to be put on by other people. It's a shame that we have not sort of rose to the occasion that the covenant demands of us in terms of our actions. And so we must express shame that we haven't been able to reach the level that we would like we're obligated to reach according to God. And then finally, le'olam eini chozer ledvar zeh, and then of course promising that forever you are not going to return to doing this transgression again. So that for him is the shortest sort of formulation for fulfilling this positive mitzvah of confessing one's transgressions when after doing a transgression. But he also details in this text that it's really a wonderful thing to actually prolong this and do more if one can. And the more one extends their confession, the more praiseworthy this is. Now, obviously, he is certainly right about this, and most of our confessions that we have within our liturgy are much longer than this. But I also, and I totally get what he's saying, that obviously the longer we spend on it, the more we say. Maybe it looks like we're being more intentional, more sincere. It brings us it has maybe more of an emotional impact on us. But those are the two things that really matter. That it has an emotional impact upon us, and then it seems, that it really communicates sincerely. If the length of one's confession is not doing that, and you're just saying words that you don't understand just because that's what you're supposed to say, that is not a confession. I'd also say sometimes when we go longer and longer with confession, especially people who suffer from mental health, can get into a lot of negative talk and sort of hyperbolate the wrong that they've done when they fall deeper and deeper into the shame aspect. And this is something that we really need to watch out for when a longer confession actually can become dangerous, spiritually dangerous for us. And so I think actually his short formulation is actually helpful to us, especially those who are prone to depression or really destructive bitterness about themselves. This is actually very helpful to sort of put protective barriers around that moment of confession so that one can do it sincerely and in a real way by fulfilling the commandments in an impactful way on oneself, but also not hurt one's soul at the same time. Mishnah Torah. We're going to continue the study of the laws of Talmud Torah, the laws of Torah study. We're in the 7th halacha today of the first chapter. We're going to talk about today of paying teachers to teach Torah. This is a really difficult topic because we're going to see that halacha and what our sages teach us and obligate us to is seemingly very different from our reality that we see in front of us. And we're gonna talk about it today. We're gonna try to square that difference and try to understand it and try to learn what we should do today based on what the Rambam is saying. So he says here, if it is a local custom for a teacher of young children to take payment, he should be paid. The father is obligated, or parents are obligated to pay for their instruction until they can read the entire written Torah. So in a place, and so what he's saying here is that a teacher of young children who is just learning the Aleph Bet and still hasn't learned the written Torah yet needs to we need to actually pay in order to accomplish the mitzvah. Remember, it's a mitzvah to teach your child, so you actually have to pony up the money to pay the teacher in order to teach your child. And the reason that this is going to be an if, not you must in all cases, is because the general understanding is teaching Torah, there should never be payment for teaching Torah. And this is a general norm we see throughout the sages and throughout the halachic system. But it often runs up against the reality is that people need money to eat and to have their basic needs. And if they're taking time to teach children Torah or anybody Torah, they're losing money from having gainful employment and from the ability to make money for their family, their basic necessities. And so it often comes that therefore they're paid. But this doesn't really square away with halacha. And we actually see, and we've talked about this in other episodes, that the sages in the Talmud all had day jobs. They all worked lots of regular labor jobs, all different kinds of jobs to support their families in addition to their Torah study. They did not support their family through Torah study. And so this really becomes very important. But I think the Rambam is basically stating a reality that there are customs in places to pay teachers to teach Torah. Now, there are many reasons or halachic reasons that people give so that it actually becomes acceptable to pay teachers for teaching. One that is often used with young children is that you're not paying a teacher to teach Torah, you're paying a teacher to take care of the child that is going to be with them during this time. So you're really paying for childcare, not for Torah study. Now, this works relatively well for very young kids, but it certainly doesn't work well for adults, right? Just because you're sitting with a teacher doesn't mean the teacher is taking care of your physical needs at the time. So this would not really work for adults. The common idea is that what you're paying for, and what's often talked about today, is that what you're really paying for is the time in which that they're losing, in which they could have used for gainful employment. They're sacrificing on behalf of your child, and therefore they should be compensated for that time, not for the actual Torah they teach. But again, this is very stretched, obviously, and this is certainly not the ideal situation. So very, very important, and I think it's important for us to understand, especially as rabbis, like myself, that to try as much as possible to never be paid for teaching Torah itself. I might be paid, for example, in my job as a congregational rabbi for many other things that I do, but I should not be paid specifically for teaching Torah. Very, very important. And he makes this really clear in the second part. However, it is forbidden to take a wage for teaching the oral law, meaning you can take a wage for maybe teaching the written law for young children or something like that, or the written Torah or something like that, meaning the 5 books of Moses, sort of the basics. But once you go on to teaching rabbinic works, Mishnah, Talmud, Midrash, other things like this, it actually really does. The Rambam really comes out as a hardliner against this and says it's forbidden. It's deeply forbidden to do that. And he brings this out from a Midrash about Moses that is brought in the Gemara that says, Deuteronomy says, "Behold, I have taught you laws and statute as God commanded me." And what does it mean when he said, "as God commanded me"? Moses says, "Just as I learned at no cost, so too you have been taught from me at no cost. Teach the coming generations in a like manner. Teach them at no cost as you've learned from me." So we here have a specific statement saying that at least oral law cannot be taught, because oral law is the actual revelation of the meaning of the law in practice itself. That's what we mean here by oral law. That is derived whether through the Talmud, the Midrash, whatever rabbinic writing we want to say. Once it's actually how we're supposed to practice the Torah, we can't receive payment for that. Other things maybe we can, but not for that. But he then says, nevertheless, if a person cannot find someone to teach him at no cost, he must pay for a study, as implied by Proverbs 23:23, by truth, kaneh et emet. May he charge to so if you're in a place where you want to really need to learn Torah because it's a mitzvah, but there's no one who's willing to do it for free, then you have to pay for it, because you still have this active mitzvah of learning Torah, even though the teacher is transgressing by asking for money at that point. At least according to what the Rambam has said here. And thus it can be derived, therefore, that he says that if you are in that place, it actually is forbidden for you to charge to teach Torah, even though one's own teacher charged him to instruct him. So just because everyone else is doing it, or that's sort of the idea or the custom in that area, the charge for even teaching oral Torah, for teaching Talmud, Mishnah, Halacha, that kind of stuff, you still are not allowed to do it. Very, very importantly. And so this is Rambam trying to sort of square a round peg, because he has this halacha that and we have this very clear idea within the sages that Torah teachers should not be paid. And this comes out from the idea that we should not make teaching Torah like any other job, that you just do it in order to sort of gain money or make a living for your family. The sages believe that this would cause Jews to disrespect the profession itself and disrespect Torah teachers and just see Torah as a means of making money, and it can never be like that. And so the tradition here is very clear that people should not receive compensation for teaching Torah, and this is something that I try to uphold. It's why we never charge for any classes at Temple of Aaron here. The Daily Derech here is free. You can obviously download it, listen to it. I always never try to charge when I'm teaching a class. Even if I'm going to be a guest speaker somewhere, I might say pay for my airplane, my flight, the food that I need to eat, basically everything else that I need to do, maybe my time missed from work or whatever it is, but certainly not for the content itself and for the teaching itself. And I think this is something that as a community, we need to look at more intensely. And we can't just say, oh, well, everyone needs to be paid, and that's how we respect Torah scholars. We pay them for their teaching. That's actually not what the sages say. It's not what the Talmud says. And I'm very much aware of the economic realities, but I think it's a conversation that really needs to be had in a more honest way of how can we actually fulfill this halacha in our communal setting, while making sure that Torah scholars have enough to eat and have their basic needs met. Menorat HaMaor. We'll continue learning that introduction to the first candle in Menorat HaMaor, the first section, and we are in the middle of a Gemara that is talking about the idea and brings up the case of someone who gets the Shemayim, someone who gets to heaven and says, you know what, I was either too poor, I was too rich, I was too wicked, whatever it may say, to learn Torah and to spend some time to actually learn Torah regularly. And we went through the example in our last episode about the case of the poor person, and specifically by bringing up a story about Hillel. We're going to deal with the rich person today. So according to the Gemara, it says, to the rich man, they say, the rich person, of course, who comes to Shemaim says, I'm sorry, I haven't studied enough Torah, but I was too busy dealing with my wealth. He said, they say to him, why do you not occupy yourself with Torah? And he says back to them, I was wealthy and preoccupied with managing my possessions. More money, more problems. And so they say back to him, were you wealthier than Rabbi Elazar ben Charsom? And then they continue to talk about this character, Rabbi Elazar ben Charsom. They said about Rabbi Elazar ben Charsom that his father left him 1,000 towns on land and corresponding to them 1,000 ships at sea. So that's a lot of land, a lot of wealth, a lot of stuff going on. Yet, every single day he would take a sack of flour upon his shoulder and travel from city to city and from province to province in order to study Torah. So even though he had so much wealth, and he had obviously so much business going on dealing with these ships and the towns and everything like that, he still took the time every day with a sack of flour upon his shoulder, traveling from city to city, from province to province, in order to learn Torah. And so this obviously shows that even someone who has extreme wealth still can find the time to learn Torah if they push themselves hard enough. And throughout all his days, he never once went to inspect them. Rather, he sat and occupied himself with Torah all day and all night. Now, this is an extreme case where it seems that Rabbi Elazar ben Charsom is ignoring his wealth. It's not only that he's dealing with his wealth and dealing with his business, but he also is learning Torah. He seems to have said, I'm not even going to think about this. It's not even important to me. And I think that's an ascetic ideal that is sort of beyond most people, and I don't recommend that necessarily. I think there is, as Rabbi Elazar ben Charsom's case can be inspiring, I think there is hopefully a middle ground between this. But regardless, one time his own servants found him and pressed him into forced labor. He said to them, leave me be, for I'm going to study Torah. They replied, by the life of Rabbi Elazar ben Charsom, my master, we will not let you go. And he said nothing to them. And so this is all to say that if you are stubborn enough to and not be distracted, you too can find time to learn Torah every day. And obviously, again, this is an extreme case, but it should inspire us that since there were a few people who at least were able to do this, as recorded in the Talmud, we should at least be able to find a middle position. So again, all this to say, don't rationalize the fact that you are too busy with your business or your money or whatever requirement you have to learn Torah, you could still find time. And you certainly don't need to be like Rabbi Elazar ben Harsom, who studies Torah all day and all night and does absolutely nothing else. I don't necessarily recommend that, but at least we should be able to create fixed times even for a person who's wealthy. So again, it's no excuse to this man who's coming to heaven to say, I was so wealthy, I was so busy with my stuff that I couldn't do anything, and I couldn't learn Torah. That's not a good enough excuse to be exempt from this extremely, extremely important mitzvah. Well, that's it for today, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Daily Derech. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to email me anytime at rmr@templeofaaron.org. Thank you so much for listening. There are so many people to thank, and you can look in the show notes for that. And also, if you want to know and see any of these texts in the original, we actually have that too. You can actually find that in our episode description. So look in each of the episode descriptions, and you'll find that information right there. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.